The call came during a board meeting. My phone vibrated against the conference table, drawing irritated glances from my colleagues. I usually silence it completely, but something made me keep it on vibrate that day. Maybe some part of me knew. "Sierra, there's been an accident." The nurse's voice was practiced, professional. "Your parents were brought in 20 minutes ago. You need to come to Memorial right away." I remember standing up, my chair scraping against the floor. The sound felt distant, like it belonged to someone else's life. Someone else's emergency. The quarterly reports scattered beneath my hands, numbers blurring into meaningless shapes. "I have to go," I said to no one in particular. Ryan, my husband, wasn't in the office that day. "Another startup meeting," he'd said. They were becoming more frequent lately. The drive to Memorial Hospital was a study in suspended animation. Every red light lasted an eternity. Every green light felt too brief. My hands gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles went white, and I kept thinking about how Mom had called just yesterday to tell me about their anniversary plans. 35 years. Dad had something special planned, she'd said. The emergency room reeked of antiseptic and despair. A nurse directed me to a small waiting room, where a doctor in rumpled scrubs was already waiting. His face told me everything before he opened his mouth. "Mrs. Mitchell," he began, but I cut him off. "Johnson." I kept my name. "Just tell me." He nodded, probably thinking I was one of those modern feminist types. If he only knew it was because Ryan's mother had thrown such a fit about it at the wedding. "Your mother didn't survive the impact. We did everything we could, but the injuries were too severe." The words hit like physical blows, but there was more. There's always more. "Your father is in surgery. The crash, there's significant damage to his spine. We won't know the full extent until he's stable, but you should prepare yourself for the possibility of paralysis." I sat down. Or maybe my legs just gave out. The vinyl chair squeaked beneath me, and I focused on that sound because it was easier than processing anything else. "The other driver?" I heard myself ask. "Fled the scene. Police are investigating." Hours passed in that waiting room. Ryan didn't answer my calls. His sister Laura texted to say he was in an important meeting and couldn't be disturbed. I watched the surgery board, tracking Dad's progress through cryptic abbreviations and status updates. Finally, another doctor appeared. Different scrubs, same grim expression. "The surgery was successful, but..." She paused, probably searching for gentle words. I wanted to tell her not to bother. Gentle words wouldn't change the reality. "Your father is paralyzed from the waist down. The damage was too extensive." I nodded, numb. "Can I see him?" "He's in recovery. Once we move him to ICU, you can have a few minutes." When I finally saw him, tubes snaking from his body and monitors beeping their steady rhythm, I barely recognized him. Dad had always been larger than life, the investigative journalist who took down corrupt politicians, the man who taught me to stand up for what's right. Now he looked small, diminished. His eyes fluttered open, focusing on me with difficulty. "Grace?" he whispered. "No, Dad. It's Sierra." "Sierra." His voice cracked. "Your mother." "I know." I took his hand, careful of the 4 lines. "I know." He turned his face away, but not before I saw the tears. In 32 years, I'd never seen my father cry. That's when it really hit me, everything had changed. My mother was gone, my father broken, and somewhere out there, someone was responsible. My phone buzzed again. Ryan, finally returning my calls. But as I looked at my father's ravaged face, I let it go to voicemail. Some things matter more than others. Some things demand your full attention. And some things demand justice. Moving back into my childhood home felt like stepping into a time capsule. Everything was exactly as Mom had left it, her gardening magazine still open on the coffee table, her coffee mug unwashed in the sink. I couldn't bring myself to touch any of it. This is completely unnecessary, Martha said, inspecting the living room like she was conducting a health inspection. There are them both. Ryan understands. Does he? Martha's perfectly manicured nails drummed against her designer purse. Because he mentioned you haven't been home in 3 days. I've been at the hospital with my father, who just lost his wife and the use of his legs. Where has Ryan been? The silence that followed was thick enough to choke on. Laura shifted uncomfortably, but Martha held my gaze with steel in her eyes. Business meetings, she said finally. Important ones. The kind that secure your comfortable lifestyle. My phone buzzed, the hospital calling about Dad's discharge tomorrow. I answered it, turning my back on both women. As I discussed medications and care schedules, I heard them whispering behind me. Probably plotting their next assault on my life choices. After I hung up, Martha cleared her throat. We're having a family dinner next Sunday. The investors will be there. Ryan needs you present. I can't leave Dad alone that long. Hire a nurse for the evening, Laura suggested, as if it were that simple. As if Dad wasn't still calling out for Mom in his sleep. I'll think about it. I wouldn't. They left eventually, their disapproval lingering like cheap perfume. I was scrubbing Mom's coffee mug when Ryan finally showed up, looking exhausted in his rumpled suit. They mean well, he said, loosening his tie. They're just worried about us. They're worried about appearances. I put the mug back in the sink, still unwashed. Where were you today? Meetings. The series of funding is almost secured. He reached for me, but I stepped back. Sierra, come on. Don't be like this. Like what? A grieving daughter? An attentive caregiver? A disappointing wife? That's not fair. No? I pulled out my phone, showing him the missed calls from the hospital. I needed you there. I needed my husband. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so familiar it hurt. I'm trying to build something here. For us. For our future. And I'm trying to keep what's left of my family alive. The words came out sharper than intended, but I didn't take them back. Ryan's phone chimed, another message, another meeting probably. He checked it reflexively, his face changing for just a second before he schooled his features. I should go, he said. Early meeting tomorrow. I watched him leave, noticed how he didn't kiss me goodbye. Through the window, I saw Martha's car still parked down the street. Waiting for him, probably. Planning their next move in whatever game they were playing. The house creaked around me, full of ghosts and memories. Mom's voice seemed to echo in the empty spaces. Sometimes people show you exactly who they are. The trick is believing them the first time. I picked up Mom's coffee mug again, finally ready to wash it. As the water ran over my hands, I made a decision. If Martha and Ryan wanted to play games, fine. But they'd forgotten something crucial about me. I was Tom Johnson's daughter. The man who'd exposed corruption and brought down empires with nothing but truth and determination. And I'd learned from the best. Let them plot and scheme. I had work to do. Old habits die hard. Even with everything happening, I couldn't help checking our joint accounts. The accountant in me needed the comfort of numbers. That's when I noticed the first discrepancy. A wire transfer for $50,000 to an account I didn't recognize. I was sitting at Dad's kitchen table, surrounded by medical bills and insurance forms, when I started digging deeper. More transfers. Different amounts, different accounts, all authorized by Ryan. The total made my stomach turn, nearly $500,000. Something wrong? Dad wheeled himself into the kitchen, his newspaper folded in his lap. You've got that look your mother used to get when she was balancing the checkbook. I closed my laptop. Just some work stuff. Sierra. His voice carried the weight of 30 years in investigative journalism. Don't lie to your father. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. A text from Laura, Mom wants to know if you're coming to the investor dinner Sunday. Ryan needs an answer. I ignored it. Dad, when you were investigating the Thompson scandal, how did you know where to look? He set his newspaper aside, studying me. Follow the money. It always leads somewhere interesting. A pause. What kind of trouble is Ryan in? I don't know yet. I reopened my laptop. But I'm going to find out. That evening, I drove to Ryan's office. The startup had taken over an entire floor of a downtown building, Martha's connections at work, no doubt. The security guard knew me, waved me through. The office was mostly empty, but light spilled from Ryan's corner office. I heard voices as I approached, his and a woman's. They were laughing. The transfer went through, the woman asked. Smooth as silk, Ryan replied. Mother's connections at the bank really came through. I stepped into the doorway. Ryan was perched on his desk, leaning toward a striking blonde woman in an expensive suit. They jumped apart when they saw me. Sierra. Ryan straightened his tie. What are you doing here? Following the money. I looked at the blonde. You must be Cassandra. The new CFO? The woman smiled, all perfect teeth and practiced charm. Ryan's told me so much about you. Funny. He's never mentioned you. Ryan moved between us. Cass, could you give us a minute? She gathered her things, brushing past me with a knowing smirk. Once she was gone, Ryan's charm offensive kicked in. It's not what you think. $500,000, Ryan. Where is it? His face changed, confidence replacing concern. Business investments. The startup needs. Don't. I pulled out my phone, showed him the transfer records. These accounts trace back to shell companies. I'm an accountant, remember? This is what I do. You've been spying on me? You've been stealing from us. He ran a hand through his hair, that familiar gesture again, but now it felt calculated, rehearsed. Everything I do is for us. For our future. You've been so focused on your father, you can't see the bigger picture. The bigger picture? My laugh sounded strange, even to me. My mother is dead. My father is paralyzed. And you're embezzling money with your girlfriend. Cassandra is a business associate. Is that what Martha calls her too? His expression hardened. Leave my mother out of this. Why? She's clearly involved. I moved closer, watching his reaction. Did she help you set up those accounts? Is that why she's so invested in your success? Ryan's phone buzzed, speak of the devil. He glanced at it, then back at me. Go home, Sierra. You're upset, not thinking clearly. I'm thinking very clearly. I headed for the door, then stopped. One more thing. I'm freezing our accounts. All of them. Good luck explaining that to your investors. You can't do that. Watch me. I walked out, my heels clicking against the marble floor. Behind me, I heard Ryan making a frantic phone call, probably to Martha. Let them scramble. Let them worry. Dad was right. Follow the money. It always leads somewhere interesting. And I was just getting started. The manila envelope arrived 3 days after I froze the accounts. No return address, just my name typed in clean, professional font. Inside were photos, dozens of them. Ryan and Cassandra at restaurants, hotels, intimate moments they thought were private. But it was the last photo that made my hands shake. Martha, Ryan, and Cassandra in Martha's study, spreading documents across her antique desk. Dad found me staring at that photo, my coffee gone cold beside me. Someone's trying to help you, he said, wheeling closer. Or hurt you. Sometimes it's the same thing. I know who sent these. Laura's passive-aggressive streak had finally found a useful outlet. She'd always resented being left out of Martha's schemes. My phone lit up with a text from Ryan, we need to talk. Coming over tonight. I showed Dad the message. He folded his newspaper carefully, the way he always did before saying something important. Your mother never trusted Martha, you know. Said she reminded her of a spider, always spinning webs. Why didn't Mom ever say anything to me? She wanted you to make your own choices. He smiled sadly. She also said you'd figure it out eventually. You have her instincts. The doorbell rang at exactly 7. Ryan stood there with takeout from my favorite restaurant, a peace offering. Behind him, I spotted Martha's car idling at the curb. Your mother's new chauffeur service? I asked, letting him in. She's worried about you. We all are. He set the food down, reaching for my hand. I stepped back. Sierra, please. Let me explain about the accounts. Which part? The embezzlement or the affair? His face paled. How did you? I spread the photos across the kitchen counter. He stared at them, then at me, calculations running behind his eyes. It's not what you think, he started, but I cut him off. Stop lying. I've seen the transfer records, the hotel receipts, everything. What I don't understand is why Martha's involved. My mother's just trying to protect the company. The company, or you? A noise from the hallway made us both turn. Dad had wheeled himself to the kitchen doorway. Evening, Ryan. Leaving so soon? Ryan straightened his tie, another tell I'd never noticed before. Actually, Tom, I need to speak with Sierra privately. Actually, I said, pulling out my phone, I think we should all hear what the police have to say about those transfers. You wouldn't. But his voice wavered. Try me. He grabbed my wrist. Think about what you're doing. This could ruin everything. Ryan. Dad's voice carried the weight of his old investigative days. Take your hand off my daughter. The moment stretched, taut as a wire. Then Ryan let go, backing away. You're making a mistake. Mother was right about you, you're just like your father. Always chasing stories, never seeing the bigger picture. The picture looks pretty clear from here, I said, showing him the photo of him with Martha and Cassandra. How long has your mother been running your life? Or is it the other way around? His phone buzzed, Martha, probably wondering why he was taking so long. He checked it reflexively, then headed for the door. This isn't over. Actually, it is. I followed him. Tell your mother I said thanks for the wedding china. I'll send it back piece by piece. After he left, Dad wheeled over to the window. We watched Martha's car pull away, its taillights disappearing into the darkness. You know they'll retaliate, he said quietly. I gathered the photos, adding them to my growing file of evidence. I'm counting on it. Your mother would be proud. He paused. And worried. I touched the empty space on my finger where my wedding ring used to be. Mom taught me to care for people. You taught me to fight for the truth. I'm doing both. Outside, thunder rumbled, a storm rolling in. Perfect weather for what came next. The social worker's office felt too small, too warm. Martha sat across from me, perfectly composed in her designer suit, while Laura hovered by the window like an anxious shadow. We're concerned about Tom's care situation, Martha said, her voice dripping with manufactured concern. Living alone with a daughter who's clearly struggling with her mental health. I'm not struggling with anything, I cut in, but the social worker was already making notes. Mrs. Mitchell tells me you've been making accusations about your husband's business dealings, the social worker said. And that you've become increasingly paranoid. I looked at Martha, really looked at her. The carefully crafted concern, the subtle manipulation. This wasn't just retaliation, this was elimination. Show her the photos, Laura, Martha commanded. Laura pulled out her phone, hands shaking slightly. Sierra's been following Ryan, taking pictures. It's obsessive. The social worker examined the photos, my own surveillance pictures, carefully edited to look like stalking. I recognized Martha's touch, the way she could twist truth into poison. These are concerning, the social worker said. We just want what's best for Tom, Martha added. A professional care facility. Over my dead body. The words came out before I could stop them. You see? Martha raised an eyebrow. These emotional outbursts. My phone buzzed, Dad's caregiver. I answered despite the social worker's frown. Hello? Sierra, you need to come home. Your father's fallen. The world tilted. I stood up, gathering my things. This meeting is over. Running away won't help your case, Martha called after me. I turned back. You know what's interesting, Martha? I've been recording everything since I walked in. Including Laura's admission about the edited photos. Laura's face went pale. Martha's mask slipped for just a second, showing the rage beneath. And I've already submitted documentation about Ryan's financial fraud to the SEC, I added. They're very interested in your involvement. The drive home was a blur. I found Dad in his study, shaken but okay. The caregiver had caught him before he hit the ground. I'm fine, he insisted as I checked him over. Just got dizzy reaching for a book. Which book? He pointed to Mom's old photo album. I retrieved it, recognizing the determination in his eyes. There's something you need to see, he said, opening to a marked page. About the accident. The photo showed Mom and Martha at some charity event years ago. They were smiling, but Mom's eyes were hard. Your mother was investigating Martha, Dad said quietly. Financial fraud, money laundering. She found something big, right before. My hands went numb. The accident. The police never found the other driver. The implications hit like a physical blow. I sat down hard, the photo album sliding from my lap. My phone buzzed again, Ryan. Sierra, whatever you're planning, stop. Please. You don't understand what Mother's capable of. I thought of Mom, of Dad in his wheelchair, of all the carefully orchestrated destruction. Actually, I said, I'm starting to understand perfectly. After hanging up, I found Dad watching me with concern. Your mother wanted justice, he said. But she also wanted you safe. And what do you want? He wheeled closer, taking my hand. I want you to be smarter than we were. Martha's dangerous, but she's also careful. She won't make the same mistake twice. No, I agreed, picking up the photo album. She'll make new ones. I spent the night digitizing Mom's research, adding it to my own evidence. In the morning, I had 2 missed calls from Laura and a text from Ryan, Mother knows what you're doing. Don't make her choose. I looked at Dad, peaceful in his morning routine, unaware of how close we'd come to losing each other. Martha had tried to take him away, just like she'd taken Mom. Some lines shouldn't be crossed. I picked up my phone and dialed. Hello, this is Sierra Johnson. I'd like to speak to the lead investigator on my mother's accident case. I have new evidence to submit. The game was changing. Martha wanted to play hardball? Fine. Let's play. The break-in happened while Dad was at physical therapy. I came home to find the front door unlocked, Mom's research scattered across the floor, and her photo album missing. But they'd left something behind, a single photo on the kitchen counter. Mom and Martha at that charity event, now torn in half. My phone rang. Martha. Consider this a warning, she said without preamble. Your mother didn't listen either. You won't get away with this. I already have. Check your email. I pulled up my inbox with trembling hands. There it was, a message from the SEC. My evidence submission had been rejected. Insufficient proof. Case closed. Amazing how the right connections can make problems disappear, Martha said. Now, about your father's care situation. A text from Laura interrupted, police at Ryan's office. They're asking about financial fraud. My heart stopped. Martha was still talking, but I wasn't listening anymore. She'd played me perfectly, used my own evidence to frame Ryan instead. You can't protect everyone, Sierra, Martha continued. Choose wisely. I drove to Ryan's office, breaking every speed limit. Police cars surrounded the building. Through the glass doors, I saw Ryan in handcuffs, his face ashen. Our eyes met as they led him out. I tried to warn you, he said as they passed. You never understood what she's capable of. Cassandra appeared beside me, watching Ryan's departure with calculated interest. Martha sends her regards. She says to remind you about the social worker's report. The pieces clicked together. If Ryan went down for fraud, I'd lose everything, including custody of Dad. Martha had orchestrated the perfect trap. Back home, Dad was waiting. The caregiver quit, he said quietly. Got a better offer, apparently. I sank into Mom's old chair, defeat washing over me. I'm sorry, Dad. I thought I could fix everything, but I just made it worse. Your mother said the same thing, right before. He wheeled closer, taking my hand. She was going to expose Martha's schemes. Then the accident happened. It wasn't an accident. No. He pressed something into my palm, a small USB drive. But your mother was smarter than they knew. She kept a backup. My phone buzzed again, an unknown number. The voice was familiar, Laura. I can't do this anymore, she whispered. Meet me at the old boathouse. There's something you need to see. It's a trap, Dad warned. Probably. I stood up, pocketing the USB drive. But it might be our only chance. The boathouse was dark when I arrived. Laura emerged from the shadows, looking over her shoulder. Mother doesn't know I'm here, she said. But she's planning something. Something big. Ryan was just the beginning. Why are you helping me? Because I was there that night. The night your mom. She swallowed hard. Mother made me watch. Said I needed to learn about loyalty. A car door slammed nearby. Laura's eyes widened with fear. She followed me, she whispered. You need to. Headlights swept across the boathouse. Martha's voice carried through the darkness. Laura, darling, come out now. Laura shoved a folder into my hands. Evidence. The real story. But you didn't get it from me. She stepped out into the light, leaving me hidden in the shadows. I heard Martha's cold greeting, Laura's mumbled excuses. Get in the car, Martha commanded. We'll discuss your disloyalty at home. I waited until they left, before opening the folder. Inside was everything, bank records, shell companies, and a detailed account of Mom's accident. But something felt wrong. The documents were too perfect, too complete. My phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. Wrong choice, Sierra. Check on your father. I ran to my car, dialing home. No answer. The USB drive felt heavy in my pocket, Mom's real evidence, not Martha's carefully crafted trap. Sometimes winning means losing everything first. I started the engine, my decision made. Martha wanted to play games with evidence and loyalty? Fine. But this time, we'd play by Mom's rules. The Mitchell family's annual charity gala buzzed with wealth and whispers. I walked in wearing Mom's old pearl necklace, USB drive secure in my clutch. Martha held court near the stage, Laura hovering nearby like a nervous shadow. Sierra. Martha's smile didn't reach her eyes. Bold of you to come. How's Tom? Safe. I matched her tone. Unlike Ryan. Her perfectly manicured hand tightened around her champagne flute. Such a shame about his legal troubles. Perhaps if you'd been a more attentive wife. Or if you'd been a less controlling mother. The surrounding conversations quieted. Martha's smile turned razor-sharp. Careful, dear. You're not the only one with evidence. You mean this? I held up Laura's folder. Your carefully crafted trap? Laura told me everything. Laura flinched. Martha's expression flickered, just for a moment, but I caught it. Did she? Martha glanced at her daughter. Laura, darling, tell Sierra what really happened the night Grace died. Laura went pale. Mother, please. Tell her who was driving the car. The room spun. I looked at Laura, really looked at her. The guilt in her eyes told me everything. Mother made me, Laura whispered. She said it was just to scare them, to stop Grace from exposing everything. I didn't know. Enough. Martha's voice cracked like a whip. Sierra, let's take this somewhere private. No. I pulled out my phone, already streaming. Let's do this right here. Mom's evidence, the real evidence, is being uploaded to every major news outlet right now. Martha laughed, but there was an edge to it. What evidence? We took everything. Not everything. I touched Mom's pearl necklace. Dad wasn't the only journalist in the family. Mom had her own methods. Recognition dawned in Martha's eyes. The pearls, Mom's backup drive, hidden in plain sight all these years. You're bluffing. I held up my phone, showing the upload progress. Want to bet your reputation on that? Martha moved with surprising speed, reaching for my phone. I stepped back, bumping into someone, Ryan, just released on bail. It's over, Mother, he said quietly. I've already testified. Martha froze. You wouldn't betray your own mother. Like you betrayed me? Set me up to take the fall? Ryan's voice shook. I saw the evidence. I know what you did to Grace. Everything I did was for this family. Martha's composure cracked. Grace was going to destroy us. Laura understood that, didn't you, darling? But Laura was backing away, tears streaming down her face. I can't keep lying. The other guests were openly staring now. Martha's carefully constructed world was unraveling thread by thread. Last chance, I said. Confess. To everything. Or I release Mom's evidence and let the courts decide. You're just like her, Martha spat. Self-righteous, thinking you know best. Grace never understood that sometimes bad things are necessary. Necessary? My voice rose. Like killing my mother? Paralyzing my father? Destroying your own son? I protected what was mine. Martha's mask finally shattered. Grace was going to expose decades of work. Our reputation, our position, everything would have been lost. She had to be stopped. The room went deadly quiet. Martha realized too late what she'd said, and to whom. Police officers emerged from the crowd, they'd been waiting for exactly this. Martha Mitchell, one began, you're under arrest. I watched them lead her away, Laura sobbing quietly beside me. Ryan touched my arm. I'm sorry, he whispered. For everything. I know. I stepped back. But sorry isn't enough anymore. The pearls felt warm against my throat, Mom's last gift, her final piece of evidence. She'd known, somehow, that this day would come. That truth would need a guardian. Martha turned at the door, her eyes meeting mine. In that moment, I saw not a monster, but a woman who'd lost herself to power and control. You've destroyed everything, she said. No. I touched the pearls again. I just finished what Mom started. Justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers, passed down through generations, waiting for the right moment to speak its truth. The verdict came down on a Tuesday. I sat in the courtroom, Mom's pearl necklace warm against my throat, as Martha Mitchell received her sentence. 20 years. Laura got 5, with possibility of parole. She wouldn't look at me as they led her away. Ryan waited outside the courthouse, his tie loosened, shadows under his eyes. The company's finished, he said. Everything Mother built. Everything she stole, I corrected. He nodded, running a hand through his disheveled hair. I signed the divorce papers. They're with your lawyer. Thank you. Sierra. He hesitated. I never wanted any of this. But you let it happen. I touched the pearls. We all did, until Mom stood up. At home, Dad had spread old photos across the kitchen table. Not the staged charity galas or corporate events, but real moments, Mom in her garden, laughing at something off camera. Me as a child, perched on Dad's shoulders. Found something interesting, he said, wheeling back to show me a photo I'd never seen. Mom at her desk, writing in a journal. Your mother's diary. It was hidden in the attic. My hand shook as I opened it. The last entry was dated the day before the accident. Some truths cost everything. But silence costs more. The doorbell rang. Laura stood on the porch, looking small without Martha's shadow looming over her. I'm turning state's evidence, she said. About everything. Not just Mom's schemes, but the other families she destroyed, the lives she ruined. She pulled out an envelope. Including this. Inside was a letter from Mom to Martha, dated just before the accident. A final warning, a last chance at redemption. Martha had chosen power instead. I never got to say sorry, Laura whispered. To any of them. Sometimes sorry isn't enough. I handed back the envelope. But the truth is a start. After she left, I found Dad in Mom's garden. The roses she'd planted were blooming, defiant against the autumn chill. You know what your mother would say about all this? He gestured at the flowers. Life finds a way. I pressed a hand to my stomach, where the first flutter of movement had started yesterday. I hadn't told anyone decades of Martha's schemes. Ryan's company would be dismantled, its stolen assets returned. But here, in this garden, none of that seemed to matter as much as the roses Mom had planted, blooming against all odds. I miss her, I said quietly. She's here. Dad touched a rose petal. In the truth you fought for. In the justice you won. In the life you're choosing. I felt another flutter, my own secret, my own truth, growing stronger each day. Not a weapon like Martha's secrets, not a shield like Mom's evidence, but something entirely new. The pearls caught the last light of day, their surface smooth against my fingers. Mom's final gift hadn't just been evidence, it had been a choice. Truth or silence. Justice or comfort. Love or power. She'd chosen. So had Martha. So had I. Dad smiled, a knowing look in his eyes. Your mother always said the best revenge is living well. I touched my stomach again, feeling the future move beneath my hand. No, I corrected gently. The best revenge is living true. The roses nodded in the evening breeze, witnesses to a story that had ended and another just beginning. Some truths cost everything, but silence costs more. I was done being silent.